Ado, I am going to turn this over to David, and he will introduce the panel to you.
Great, Rory. Thank you. Not too much by preamble. I know you came for the panel, but if you're not very familiar with ACT-IAC, it's a special thing, I think, where industry and government comes together to figure out how to work better for better citizen outcomes. And CX especially, I think, is at the center of that. Our energy is focused on ensuring that, as for those of us in agencies, as we think about interacting with the public, we're starting with the citizen first to understand what are their needs and how we're going to best be able to service them. So, put another way, CX, from where we're sitting, is not a set of technology solutions. It's more about a frame of mind. It's about practices. It's about culture, and there's a tools piece also, but it's more about what lens do you look through as you look at customer interactions. For those new to ACT-IAC, CX is one of many COIs. There are several others: acquisition, cybersecurity, emerging tech, evolving the workforce, modernization, network, shared services. So if you're not involved, want to get involved, there are many ways to do that. ACTIAC.org. All the information is there for you to check out and get involved if you'd like to, or talk to any of us. This is the first of our best practices sessions. It's similar to, but different from, a webinar that we did in December. Many of you may have joined that. That was with Gene Bliss. It was awesome. We had, I don't know, dozens, I forget what the final number was, but many participants on the live stream and phone call, and we want to build on that. Just to tease a couple of other upcoming events, we're planning our annual CX Summit. Mark the date. It's going to be the morning of June 25th, morning of June 25th. Our working topic is IT modernization and customer experience, how those join up. And we're going to have panels and awesome keynotes addressing that. We're trying to gear it to CIO participation and also audiences. So we'll see where we get. Our planning is just now underway. So without any further fuss, let's kick over to Crystal for our first panel.
Great, thanks. I don't want to see folks standing in the back. There are chairs up here, so don't be shy. Please come up to the front, grab a seat. We want this to be kind of a dialogue, right? So we put this together as a best practices session so that we could learn from each other. So by show of hands, how many in the room are industry? All right, government? Okay, good. That's a good mix for okay, that's a good mix. So I appreciate that, and we've got a lot to learn in government. I think it's sort of it's growing. As we can see by folks who are here, and the private sector has been doing this for a long time, and so very excited to have the folks here that we have today. And this panel is. The theme is financial services, right? So we've got a little bit of QuickenLoans here. Shawn, Krause, Executive Vice President for QuickenLoans, is going to talk a little bit about their experience and their corporate culture around CX. We have Michele, Causey, who's the Acting Director of Online Services at the IRS. Not someplace you'd think of as focused on CX, but she's got some interesting stories. And Sheridan, Chief Service Delivery and Operations at USDA, who has been going through a massive transformation with the Centers of Excellence, and a lot of interesting stuff going on there. So here's how we're going to run it. We're going to have our industry folks speak first. So Shawn's going to talk a little bit first, and I'll maybe have a follow-up question for her. We're going to ask Michele then to stand up and let you know a little bit about what's been going on there, and then we'll ask Chad to do the same. And then we're just going to open it up for audience questions. So as they're speaking, be thinking of questions that you'd like to ask, of best practice kinds of questions that would help you understand better, how you could adopt some of the practices that they have had success at in your organization. So We'll start with Shawn, and feel free to stay seated, stand, use the podium, whatever makes you most comfortable.
When you have a green light, you're good.
Can you hear me? Oh, great. Okay, so thank you for inviting me, Charlotte. Thank you. I'm glad this worked into my schedule. It's perfect, actually. So I first want to explain a little bit about QuickenLoans so you can understand where we're coming from, and because we're a very unique organization. I have been with the company for 28 years this year, and I started out as a loan processor. And our executive team, which I'm part of, we have been together on average for like 20 years. And we all started and grew up in the business. And we've been adding, and it's funny because we've been adding people from outside the company to help us like see the world in a different light because we're so much in our own world. And we have some ISM books arriving now. I'll show you those, you'll understand a little more. But that is like a great benefit we have in our company. We all have each other's backs. We're all open to feedback from each other. And we give it to each other, you know, and give honest feedback to each other. And I think that's a very, very important part of being able to know that you can always do better. And we always say we just suck less. I mean, seriously, it's right. This stuff is complicated stuff. It's very complicated, like what you're doing at the IRS, verifying someone's identity. And I mean, and there's that balance of when you have to verify someone's identity, just as an example, of making sure that it's still customer-centric, where we don't make it so difficult that someone never gets through the process. So we have to make that balance. And so anyways, I wanted to give you that context and one other thing too about me is that I actually started the process improvement team at our company in 2004, and it's called the Mousetrap team, and we re-engineered our process internally first before we could be as awesome as we are on the outside. So, and we've won 10 JD Power Awards over the years. We never went into this thinking we were going to win awards. We didn't even know what the JD Power Award was. They like called us 10 years ago and said, hey, you won the JD Power Award. We're like, great. I mean, we seriously had no idea because I don't know if any of you have ever received a questionnaire, but it's totally random for whatever the company is or the industry that they're researching. And we just happened to make the list because we started becoming such a big part. And the great thing that's happened to us over the last couple of years is that we are now the #1 largest retail mortgage lender in America. And we are the only one with a fully digital mortgage process with what we have with Rocket Mortgage. So, and we've built that over the years. And if we didn't have the inside process to have the underlying opinions of that, we wouldn't be able to. And Ryan, perfect timing. This is Ryan Eaton. Came to us as an intern and about 4 years ago. Is that about 4 years, Ryan? 5? 4 years? Yeah. Yep. I remember when he came into my office and he was an intern on the mortgage banking team and said, I want to do the Michigan and DC program, and here he is. He never left. So this is our ISMs book. I just want to, this is a huge part of who we are, and this allows us all the way from the top down. This isn't just a cutesy book. It's 18 ISMs that we talk about, and one of them is every client, every time, no exceptions, no excuses. And anything we do inside our company, and clients are considered team members and external clients. So it's not just, and any people we work with, right, outside of the company, vendors or whoever it might be. And this is like what we live by. And Dan Gilbert, our chairman and founder, our CEO, Jay Farner, Bill Emerson, our vice chairman, they, like every couple months, host an ISMs Day, which any of you are welcome to come to. Just reach out to me. Charlotte can get to you. And you can attend the session. It's like 1,000 people. We have a waiting list for it. And we've had many people cycle through. And it's a great day to understand just thinking differently. And it's funny because I could never probably work anywhere else because I'm so like, I don't know how to use the word brainwashed, but I'm just so much into our culture and what we stand for. So I'll stop there. I don't know how long I'm supposed to speak, but if you, okay.
Okay, yeah, let me just ask you this, because you talk about the culture and you talk about you re-engineered your internal process first. Can you tell me a little bit about how your leadership emphasizes the importance of operating in a customer-centric way, and how that actually plays out inside your organization.
Yeah, I can tell you a great example. Any client concern, and we call borrowers, mortgage borrowers, we call them clients. So when I'm using that word, it's the person coming to us for a mortgage. Whenever someone sends in a concern, anything, I hate to call them complaints, you know, but it's a concern, it's an opportunity. Our chairman, our CEO, our vice chairman, our whole executive team, me, we are on that chain. And we take that information and we dissect it and figure out, first, fix the issue for this client. Second, how can we make the process better? Like Charlotte, I feel so bad, like the ISM books didn't make it, but I'm like asking her all these questions, and it's only because I want to make sure that next time that it doesn't happen, right? We have to improve. Every single thing that we do every day is making it better. And Dan and Jay and Bill and Bob, our president, they will jump in on the chain, and they know the process. That's a big advantage we have in our company, is that no one can BS each other, because we all know the business. And we want to make it right for the client. That's just what we do, and it's ingrained in us. I can't tell you, I don't know how many companies there are in the world that have their whole executive team on client opportunities that, you know, that they could, it's gold. I mean, think about it. You have all these eyeballs looking at your stuff every single day, going through your process, and that is gold. I mean, giving you that feedback.
Great, thanks. We're gonna then go to Michele and ask her to give us a little glimpse into what they've been doing at IRS.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to present the perspective for the Internal Revenue Service in the Office of Online Services. Most people, they look at the IRS and they tend not to think that the IRS is taxpayer-centric or customer-focused. And it's really important that I share with you why that perception should change. I'm hoping I give you some information on why that should change. Before I jump into who I am and my background and why that's important or relevant to this conversation, I kind of really want to set the stage for what IRS is in terms of our digital interactions with taxpayers. The digital channel is the most prominent channel for interfacing with external taxpayers. We have over 609 million page views today, as of FY18, with over 3 billion interactions on irs.gov. And it's important to note that an interaction is a combination of things. It's not just visits to the website, it's also interactions with our digital products and services. So let me just take a step back. I've been supporting the IRS for over 17 years in 2 capacities, one representing industry as a contractor, and then 8 years ago, I joined the service as a federal government employee, and then subsequently became an executive here at the service. In 2010, the IRS recognized the shift in digital transformation and decided to establish an Office of Online Services to focus on taxpayer interactions. That office was headed up by Rajiv Mathur, who is now the current CIO over at Social Security Administration. Brilliant visionary. Lots of private industry experience and expertise that he could impart on the service to move that HDC forward. So when I was asked to join his team, I jumped at the chance to be a part of the product management organization and also work with irs.gov. So then, having said that, we've done a lot of things to evolve our thinking, and most importantly is culture. And I really want to emphasize why culture is important, shifting that change at the service. So, if those of you who don't know, irs.gov was first established in 2001, and it was known as the Digital Daily. And it was converted to irs.gov in 2003. And if you're interested, please check out the Wayback Machine to look at what the Digital Daily looked like. Many of you in this room from industry would probably cringe and say, oh my gosh, how was this possible? I say that to say the service has been an early adopter of technology, but recognize that we had at that time over 100,000 employees. And we have major business units, and we have IT organizations, and we have functional offices and divisions. And there's a reason for this, I promise. Each organization would pretty much charter their path for the digital space. Each organization owns their content. each organization had their own ideas of what digital products or services needed to happen. The IT organization was focused primarily on tax administration legacy systems, and that was their primary focus in order to deliver compliance and services and enforcement activities, right? But in terms of calculators, lookup tools, or where's my refund is a perfect example. That started out as a digital service that, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could provide taxpayers with the status of their where's my refund information? That application is over 15 years old. So if you think about it, we have over 40, well actually it's about 50 now because we're trying to consolidate, taxpayer-facing tools that exist on the website. And they have grown organically over time since 2001. And as mobile technologies became more prominent, the service with the establishing of the online services organization looked to find ways to really infuse customer experience and best practices in order to really make these tools adoptable by the public. Because many of them had low usage rates. And it's like, well, why? Well, you would think everyone would want to know, where's the status of their refund. And I can give you a hard metric that in 2012, before we added status trackers, during peak filing season, we were averaging about 7,000 transactions per minute on Where's My Refund. We added the status trackers in 2013. By 2015, we were averaging, during peak, 17,000 transactions per minute on Where's My Refund. So IRS.gov, and for the taxpayer, interactions, whether they're using an application or filing their taxes or looking for content on the web, it's one digital experience. So in our own organization, while I may be wage and investment and I own Where's My Refund, or I may be small business self-employed and I'm owning a taxpayer digital communications pilot, all of these different experiences to an individual taxpayer is one experience. So how do we unify and change this so that we can have a consistent brand, right? And how do we make it so that taxpayers can have a holistic experience, not only on the web, but also in their other interactions, because customer experience is more than just digital. It's looking at all the various disparate channels. It's looking at the phone, it's looking at the walk-in centers, it's looking at advertisements, it's looking at social media. There's multiple faceted channels that we need to take into account. And so in 2015, I was asked to further grow our product organization by establishing a user experience and design organization. And that was a very phenomenal effort for me, one that I'm very, very proud of. And here's why. It took a lot of time. There was a lot of education that needed to happen internal to the organization. And this was the precursor for us redesigning the IRS.gov website. So another history lesson, IRS.gov has been updated about 4 times. We've had 4 different platforms over the years since 2001. Homegrown, Vignette, OpenText, and now we're on Drupal. And when I stood up the user experience and design practice, at the time we had over 300 individuals across the service publishing content to IRS.gov. Let that sink in for a minute. 150,000 pages of content, 300 individuals federated all throughout the service, some in IT, some in wage investment, some in taxes and government entities, some in legal, all publishing content to IRS.gov, all using different standards, all using different formats, different look and feel, different versions or variations of plain language and translations. So what we did was we tried to standardize the publishing practices for IRS.gov so that we can move forward with a consistent brand and implement design standards so that when you publish and create content, it's 508 compliant, it is organized appropriately by the appropriate information architecture, tagged appropriately so that search functions can work, and that it's also 508 compliant to the point where we're addressing the majority of audiences, right? That's really, really important. As well as translations. We cannot translate the entire site to service all the populations if we don't have a solid content strategy and information architecture. So when I created the user experience and design office, we had a mix of employees. Some were already present at the IRS who had skill sets, who brought forth that legacy knowledge, but we also reached out to industry. And it was real important that we generated that culture and get them to understand that when we develop and when we publish, that we have some constraints with filing season. And I wanted them to understand what that waterfall development process looked like so that they could help educate the service on how to deliver capabilities outside of the standard filing season usually we have a freeze from January until April. Nothing new is coming out unless it's urgent. And so from a culture point of view, that required some learning. That required some trust. And more importantly, when we stood up the organization, one of the tenets was to make sure that you have empathy. We talk about creating delightful experiences. It was real important for our employees on this user experience team to also be empathetic to those 300 employees that we were about to say, guess what? We're going to take away your publishing capabilities because we're going to centralize them so that we can standardize those practices and those approaches. And we're going to create some internal capability for the service that could be leveraged to make your lives easier. We're not trying to own your content. We're trying to help you to influence and to design a content so that it can be easily consumable by the taxpayer. And that was a huge culture shift that took over 2 years. But framework and groundwork had been laid before then with a product management organization. And then fast forward, as the business units and the IT organization became comfortable with those concepts, they were very supportive of us moving towards a mobile-friendly platform, which is the Drupal web content management system. And so while the website is still not perfect, we have a long way to go. We are using user research, personas, journey mapping, and we're also looking at service design. And quite frankly, the IRS has been using service design for years, although they may not have known it. Looking at our back-end systems, how can we get information to the taxpayers more quickly, more efficiently? What systems can we modify to get that information? How do we validate identities? How do we ensure that you are who you say you are and that you've given the appropriate authorizations? All of that takes time and all of that takes work. And we're all doing this under budget constraints. I'm sure my government counterparts in the room would really appreciate that, right? And the other tenet that I would say for the user experience and design office is having patience and being flexible. Because you never know when the next initiative will come your way, and you never know when the next initiative will be paused. And that's really, really important. But empathy and being transparent and building that trust internal allows us to build that trust with the public, because protecting taxpayer data is paramount for us, in addition to having that customer experience. So, that's it.
All right, thanks, Michele. The one question I have for you, I won't ask you too much about challenges because I know the media office is probably like fish on that. But so how about what was maybe one thing that you think you did right about in sort of gaining adoption of this new mindset inside the agency?
I want to say the one thing that I did right was creating my own onboarding process for new employees at the service. So they had the traditional HR process, but we spend a lot of time making sure, because it takes a long time to hire. If anyone has ever applied for a job at the federal government, it took me well over 14 months to bring talent in. That's from creating brand new position descriptions, because the talent we were looking for, we didn't have position descriptions for a user experience designer or interactive designer or a creative director. So I had to write those. And I wrote those in partnership with U.S. Digital Service, GSA, a number of external partners, industry. We consulted with industry, our tax preparer partners, in order to inform these job descriptions to attract the correct talent. And so having said that, it is a culture shift for those coming from the outside into government and doing customer experience in government, right? You don't always have the luxury of having the right tools. And or it took quite a bit of time to get equipment, to get approved software applications. And so setting those expectations and really getting buy-in for the mission and the vision of the service is what I think I did well to attract young talent and to get young talent to stay. Because we're competing with Amazons, Facebooks, Netflix, everything you can think of is in existence in the DC metro area. So what's the value add for coming to the service? And when you set those expectations and when you understand and really communicate what the challenges are within the service, get that buy-in. So you establish that patience when you're working internal to the service.
Okay, good, thanks. I'm going to take a seating intermission here. I know that there are some folks who have come in. There are chairs up here, so don't be shy. Come on up. Okay, we're going to head to Sheridan.
Well, good morning. trying to think how to describe what I do. I'm an ex-CIO, used to be one of those kind of people. As I was sitting here thinking about what you guys were talking about and the challenges we have in USDA, I almost wanted to run out of the room screaming, because it's not very often I think about the difference between what we're trying to do here at USDA and specifically in the farm production and conservation area and some of the challenges you talk about. And the difference I want to talk about here is, to me, the customer experience journey here at USDA, and specifically in the 3 agencies that are part of the farm production and conservation mission area, is embracing and. We brought these 3 agencies together with the stated intent, I think an existential intent, to focus on our common customers, right? The one thing that we have is that we support farmers and ranchers across the U.S. either through our partnership with industry in the crop insurance business and the thousands of agents across the country, or the 18,000 people in our over 2,200 county offices around the country that directly provide that touch, that feel, that multi-generational trust bond between our employees and the farmers and ranchers in the U.S. That's the positive. That's awesome. So how do we take that trust that spans, there are customer stories about a grandfather, a father, a son or daughter meeting their county office employee and counterpart that they've been dealing with for decades. That's the kind of generational trust that has been built by our employees in the field. So how do you marry that up with the increasing reliance on digital, right? The expectation that I have that when I have a loan from a Rocket Mortgage, I can see everything about that loan. I can apply for that loan through a phone. Well, today, to get a balance on your farm loan, just one of the many business lines we have, you have to call or visit the office, right? That doesn't match the experience that people are seeing in the industry. The other piece that I want to say that makes our job very, very difficult and is worth the challenge is I was writing down all the different business lines we have in just farm production and conservation. And that's where I was having the moment when I wanted to run out of the room screaming, because, right, you have taxes, you have loans, I have direct loans, I have guaranteed loans, I have crop insurance, I have other risk-based programs, I've got disaster payment programs, I have commodity and warehousing programs, I've got conservation technical assistance, conservation financial assistance, I have conservation programs that range from 10 to 30-year contracts in the Conservation Reserve Program. All of that integrates at our field. All of that integrates at our farmer and rancher customers. Our experience in USDA for our entire existence has grown from the bottom up, from the authorization language through appropriations and ultimately through delivery. Silo after silo after silo, not intentional, all with good intent. But I believe in the government that's a normal thing. The authorizers for farm programs and the every 5 years or so farm bill, that is, the changes to our authorizing statutes are very tight. So authorization is king in ag, and the relationship and the involvement and the back and forth with our technical assistance with the Hill is a very strong bond. And so we think here in USDA program-centric, very, very program-centric. That's an asset. But when you think about it from the customer experience, the customer doesn't care about authorizing language and each individual program. The customer cares about how does all this affect me. And so what you find are the large agribusinesses, the large farms, hire people to integrate the federal government. Well, that's great for them when they have such a big business and can do that. Small farmers can't do that. So if you think that the small farmer doesn't have that opportunity and advantage, and the reality is our employees are also looking to integrate these programs so that they can serve their customers. Now that we've brought the Natural Resources Conservation Service and the Farm Service Agency together, our two field-facing organizations, right, still have their programs they support. how do we give them a 360-degree view of our customer so that they can do and have tools to help them do what we know they're already doing? Because if they see there's an issue in a conservation program and I'm an FSA employee, they're going to reach across the aisle and do that. But they're probably doing that with a piece of, a written down scratch paper or sticky instead of a 360-degree customer relationship management tool that says, hey, let me connect you with that person that can help you out over here. Or I see you've got an issue in your farm loan, let me get you connected. It doesn't mean I'm doing somebody else's job, it means I have the ability to have that moment. Because our employees in the field are dedicated to their core to our customers. What are we giving them to give them that integrated view? So the program that is really the tip of the spear for us is farmers.gov, which is a combination of web-based capabilities to improve and integrate the information from a farmer perspective. So again, designed from the outside in, and then build that and tap that in with the customer relationship management capability where I can enhance the self-service capabilities while also improving how the employees can deliver. You have to do, for us, you have to do both. Because if I give self-service capabilities to our customers, they don't trust that capability unless I pair that with an improved ability of their trusted partner in our field offices to deliver service. So we have opportunity because I brought in some folks from industry and they go, you have an amazing trust relationship that companies would kill for. How do I take advantage of that, give more tools to our field employees, build on that multi-generational trust while you probably shouldn't have to come into the office to sign a form. You probably shouldn't have to pick up the phone to get a loan balance. Right? Doesn't mean I'm going to do all the steps of a complicated farm business loan online. What it does mean is I'm going to take away those impediments, those blockers, those low-value activities. Let's make those self-service. Let's eliminate those barriers so that when I do come into the office, and our farmers love to come into the office, it's as much, many times a social visit as it is a business visit. So while I'm there and I get that social connection again, I work on those high-value business activities that only can be done by a trusted partner. The model that I try to embrace when I think of that is the financial services industry, right? The brokers, the financial services, the advisors, that kind of relationship. When I come in here, you're giving me advice that makes a difference for me, right? How can I get the equivalent experience for a small farmer, for our employees, of what the large agribusinesses have to do to hire people to integrate? How can I make that integration happen at that point of connection for everyone, not just somebody who can afford to hire somebody to do that?
Okay, great, thanks. One follow-up question for you, Chad. I actually went onto farmers.gov last night. There's a ton of product lines on that website for a lot of different types of customers, as you mentioned. So what do you think is something that has really made that work? Bringing all of those things together, and what kind of feedback have you gotten as you've been doing it?
I think the one thing that comes out if I look at the web front end, the disaster assistance discovery tool, right? This idea that I can go in and ask and answer several questions and point the farmer to the kinds of programs that can support them. That's been a big hit. I think in terms of what we've done for our employees, we put out a trade assistance, the market facilitation program. That was 5 weeks. We went from end of July to a September 4 launch for a program that ultimately has put out almost, I believe, $5 billion of payments to support commodities affected by the tariffs going on and the unfair trade practices for that country.
Okay, so this is our opportunity to open this up to audience questions. Martha's got her hand up first. I'm gonna come around with the microphone.
Hi, Martha Doris, DCI, I was gonna say GSA, but anyway,
It never goes away.
no, it doesn't. So trust is a big issue around customer experience. I'm a customer of IRS, a many time customer of QuickenLoans, not a customer of USDA, but has great programs, obviously. How do you, I know when I first used QuickenLoans, it was too good to be true, actually. I mean, it was so seamless through the digital process that you wondered, like, what really was happening. So it was so new when I, at least the digital, I guess, end to end. How do each of you, like, deal with the issue of trust when you're wanting to get your customers to use your programs?
I'll go first, I guess. So it doesn't happen overnight, obviously, and it's been a continuous process in all of our years. And I can tell you from the time I started at Quicken, we were Rock Financial back then, way back then. Our mission was just to make the best process ever. And that was even before technology. I mean, heck, when I started in the mortgage business, we were typing on a typewriter. So the weekend I started at Rock Financial QuickenLoans, we transferred to a computer system. And so it's just a continuous wanting to do the right thing. That's one of our isms too, do the right thing. And build the best process ever. I can't stress that enough, whether it's internal to our team members, external to our clients, a vendor coming on board for their experience, hiring. It's a huge thing because if you screw up one thing along the way, they're like, what else are they gonna screw up? And it's making, and you know, no one's perfect, we're gonna make mistakes, but it's how you recover from those mistakes and how you make the client feel when we've hopefully addressed their situation. And then again, learn from that experience so it doesn't happen again, and have the processes internally at your company or your agency to be able to address them and be open to the feedback. Because I can tell you, when we first started our process team 15 years ago, it was tough internally because people get defensive how you were taking away the publishing stuff, and people just it's about them feeling comfortable, right? Like knowing that there is a good result coming, a good end to it. And it's just continuous, and I can't stress that enough. Like our isms, and you know, we can get you one if you want. Just ask Charlotte or me. Oh, okay, great, awesome. So, but it truly is how we operate, and we have these to guide us, so we can continuously build that trust. That's why our servicing of a mortgage loan is so important, because I can tell you that from the complaints, like from other companies, like escrow accounts are messed up, and if you can be like right on and have the answer, just every day you gain the trust of someone. I mean, think about it in anything that you do, right? There's websites I'll go to and I sit there, if I have to sit there for more than 30 seconds, I'm gone, because I just don't have the time. It's like, it should be there immediately.
So I'll add to that when speaking about productivity, right, and cost benefit analysis and cost savings and resource reallocation. For both the taxpayers and for IRS employees, trust is really, really important, right? IRS employees need to trust that the information that they're providing is accurate and up to date, that our systems are functioning properly in order to provide that information to our taxpayers. They need to have confidence that the digital services and tools that we're creating are providing the correct information to taxpayers. And taxpayers know that what we provide them in an electronic experience versus a phone call experience versus a walk-in experience is consistent. And marketing and brand management is really, really important for us, because there's lots of individuals out there doing nefarious activities. I'm sure you all have gotten robocalls. I've been threatened to be arrested 3 times this week for not paying, you know, my taxes. I'm like, great, I'm down the hall from the commissioner, come see me. So, you know, really having that brand management is key, and having that consistent experience. Most people know if I get a letter from the IRS, it's going to look a certain way. it's going to have certain information on it. So if I get a random email, then I know that that's not IRS, because IRS typically doesn't email you unless you're one of our special pilots that we're looking at. And that is a culture shift. That's a culture shift for the public also, because as we're moving into this digital space and adopting best practices for industry, to have an experience like a USAA, or have where you can have end-to-end solutions through secure communications on a mobile device, that's going to require a mind shift change and a culture change, and that's really difficult to do, and that happens over time.
Okay, I've got one right here.
Thanks. I don't know, I thought you were going to say something, Chad.
No, go ahead.
I'm Karen Feldman, I work on farmers.gov. I have 2 questions, if I may, for the entire panel. Sorry. So, Michele, you specifically spoke about how it took you 2 years to really get that culture change in place. But for all of you, what tools do you actually use to create alignment internally within the organization to really push for that customer-centric experience? So that's one question, and I'll just throw in the second one. You guys, these are very big organizations in themselves, but they're also part of the federal government as an organization, which is ultimately what the citizens are interacting with. So how can, is it worth to, and how can we increase collaboration and adoption of cross-cutting digital products or customer experience strategies that span across the agencies within the federal government?
So I'll tackle the first part of your question for tools and service. So when standing up the UX practice, and actually even before then, we had to take a step of creating our own separate platform, independent of the existing IT infrastructure, in order to facilitate collaboration, both with industry partners as well as all the various organizations within IRS. So we created a standalone environment. The environment was outside of the IRS firewall. That's really, really key. No PII was in this environment, but it allowed us to share digital assets. It allowed us to share wireframes, documents, industry best practices in terms of conferences, learnings, materials that would help educate the various organizations within the service. And we would have meetups. We were limited inside the service at the time when an organization would stood up to tools like Live Meeting and or Office Communicator. And we have a lot of vendor partners that support us. And if those vendor partners did not have access to the IRS network through IRS laptops, it made it difficult to truly collaborate. If we wanted to collaborate with federal partners in different agencies, it made it difficult to collaborate. So this environment was a facilitator for that for us. And in addition to that, there's other tools. You know, the IRS, we service so many different taxpayers. Today I focused on the individuals. We've got businesses, we've got partners. The tax administration ecosystem is huge, and they all have different needs. And so being able to share personas and journey maps to really say, what are the interactions that a large multinational corporation may have with the service? You're going to have multiple interactions through multiple channels. So how do you track that? How do we look for ways to improve that? In order to have those experiences, we had to have a solid collaboration space. So that's one. In terms of being able to collaborate and have those larger conversations around customer-centric practices, there are a number of efforts underway right now. I think it's real important for both industry and for government to come together in forums like this to have those conversations. The President's Management Agenda, we have cross-agency priority goals. I sit on the call now almost weekly with OMB, talking with other agencies about what are you doing? Where can we partner? Instead of replicating and reinventing the wheel, let's have the conversation. That's one of the things that we did when moving to the platform for Drupal for IRS.gov. I went to Energy, I went to GSA, I went to Health and Human Services, I went to NASA. Can we leverage what you've already built? Looking at your different modules that you have to see what would be of best interest to us from an experience perspective, and how do we take that forward? So does that answer your question? Okay.
I think from our end, two things we did to try to bring people together. One we've done and one we're planning was at the beginnings of the formation of our mission area, we brought leadership together from the three agencies as well as from IT and finance and our key supporting functions to start to vision what does the customer experience mean for our programs. We actually brought up a lot more questions than answers, and in fact brought to light a huge deficit in our areas. You know, we had a lot of anecdotal evidence of our programs are complex, they're difficult, or we believe this and we have some anecdotes. And the question we kept asking throughout the session was, how would you know? How would you know? And everybody would then hang their head and say, I don't really know, because I have anecdotes, I don't have evidence, I don't have data. So it brought to light the need for better research, not only about our user experience, but about our total customer experience, to get what we might know from visits to the field, because our leaders go around the country and visit the field and they get 5 more anecdotes, 5 more stories, but where's the real evidence that you can use data to drive the change? The next step in our process is really, we're going to do the same kind of experience around specifically the farmers.gov work to bring together really a more targeted effort on what is the value that we're trying to drive forward, what's the vision for the experience we want to drive with farmers.gov. As far as sharing across, well, one, we kind of have to share across USDA, and so we're really, I mean, our IT organization, just as an example, is now composed of one ex-CIO and a bunch of people that, you know, one former, you know, we're now a single organization serving